Watching Kyle's unboxing videos again?
Yeah, he always finds the coolest... No way! A robot dog? Gotta ask where he got it.
Or use your Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra. Just draw a circle around the dog on your screen, and it shows you where to buy it right in the app.
Whoa, I just learned a new trick. And that for once, I beat Kyle to the next big thing.
Circle it, find it with the new Galaxy S24 Ultra and circle the search with Google. Get yours now at Samsung.com. Internet connection required. Results may vary based on visuals.
Hello, Duke fans, and welcome to episode 382 of the Duke Basketball Report podcast. It is Sunday, January 23rd, 2022. Duke is coming off an enormous victory against the Syracuse Orange in Cameron Indoor Stadium. We need to talk about that. We need to preview the Clemson game this week. We need to react to the beginning of tenting, which it seems like happened on campus this week. So we'll talk about all of those things. I am your host for this episode. I am Sam Klein, coming to you from Boston. I am sorry, first of all, Duke fans, that I was not on the last show. It was a somewhat hectic week. We couldn't all get the schedules to align, but I am back now. Donald Wine and Jason Evans are also with me. Donald, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great this morning. Last night, I had a virtual wine tasting, which was pretty cool. Basically, I won one in a charity auction that I went to, Sam, when I was in Boston last month. So me and a few friends were able to go to the Spanish wine region and kind of use that as our theme for our wine tasting. So that was pretty cool.
Wait, Donald, can I ask? The wine wasn't virtual. It was that you all were set, right?
No. We are not in the world of metaverse / NFT wine. I drank actual wine last night. We don't do NFT.
I don't know that
here.
I want to be in that world.
I don't either. I don't either.
In the real drinks in the real world.
It's coming
Jason,
soon.
In the unfortunate real world, Jason Evans is recovering from COVID. Jason, how are you feeling, sir? We can see, folks. We don't release the video of this, but we know that Jason is sporting a really strong 5 o'clock 3 days from now shadow or so.
No, hey, dude, this is 7 days. This is a
7
week
days
of beard going on. It's pretty impressive, I think. Thank you. I'm doing quite better. Really, all I have at this point is a little bit of a cough that comes every 10 or 15 minutes. There's no headaches, no sniffles. I am on the very ending downhill slope of my week-long battle with COVID. And yeah, I didn't shave. It's no shave COVID or whatever. Something like that.
Yeah. I've been practicing no shave every month for years now, and I recommend it. You might have to trim up
except for the top. Except for the top.
Oh yeah. It's ironic because I do shave the top, but I don't shave the bottom. So in any event, I have one more personal question for each of you. What is your? I don't know if we discussed this yet this season, but what is your status on Girl Scout cookie consumption for this Girl Scout cookie season? Either of you may answer first.
So my status is I have not gotten any Girl Scout cookies yet, and I'm going to make an appeal right now. If you are in the Sandy Springs, Georgia area, and you would like to sell Girl Scout cookies, come to my house. I will eat all the Girl Scout cookies.
I have not purchased any yet. However, usually I order a box or two from a Girl Scout troop that is in New York City. What's special about the New York City one is that there's a Girl Scout troop there who the money goes to helping find rooms for the homeless and getting them off the streets and getting them into warm shelters. So I think that's a cool way to use the money. And so I usually throw them a couple boxes worth of money every year.
When you do get around to it, I recommend the French toast ones. I think that it's a relatively new
they're
flavor,
really good.
But if you haven't had the
very
French
good.
toast ones,
Really?
they're incredible.
Because I'm all about the shortbread, man. Like a little Girl Scout cookie. The
Man, that says so much about you, Jason.
Sorry.
I used to do the lemon creams.
The Lorna Doones with milk is like heaven. but French toast sounds really good. I may check.
Yeah,
that
the
out.
French toast ones are good. Anyway, that's my searing thought of the day. We need to talk about the Duke game because after the up and down roller coaster of the FSU game, this one yesterday in Cameron was relatively breezy for the Blue Devils. It was a 79-59 victory. It wasn't even that close. Jim Boeheim left the starters in down the stretch, and they closed a 30-point lead into a 20-point lead to make it. I don't even know if they made it respectable, but they didn't make it a 30-point victory for Duke. They made it a 20-point victory for Duke. So let's start with headlines, and we are going to do something slightly out of order this week because we had asked folks, I think a week ago, to start sending us headlines, and we've gotten a ton of them. So, Jason, I want you to read a couple of the headlines that we've received from listeners for this game.
Absolutely, and we got some good ones. I'll start with a longtime friend of the podcast, David Kerman, the K-Man. He said several people did this. They sort of went with the whole orange kind of thing, as in, orange is the fruits. So K-Man's headline was Duke defense squeezes the orange. We also got a good one from Ken Heps, who said, no excuses, Duke crushes the orange. And it's worth noting, this is one that you have to see to understand. He highlighted the cuse part of excuses. And Brian Campbell.
Clever.
Yes, very clever. I like that one. Brian Campbell wrote us this one. I like this. A little callback to Trading Places here. He said, orange futures bottom out as Duke's deep threes blanket the cues. And the deep threes is like a play on deep freeze because obviously freezing weather is bad for orange futures. So I like all those. Those are some clever stuff. Keep them coming, people.
Those were really good. This is why we asked the listeners to send these in, because some of them are very, very clever. We appreciate them.
So, Jason, now that you've given us the listener headlines, can you give us your own headline from this game?
Yes, and I want to note that my headline was done prior to looking at any of theirs.
So there was no cheating involved.
No cheating. No cheating happened here. I just went with a little bit of alliteration. My headline is Dominant Defense Smothers Syracuse.
I like it. Donald, what did you have?
So mine was also done without looking at these, but was done while in honor of what I was doing while watching this game, which was having brunch. And so it is a champagne Saturday as Duke makes mimosas out of orange.
Oh, I like that one too.
That's really good, Donald. That is really good.
I had no references to Syracuse in my headline. I went with no keels, but no keeling. Because Duke didn't tip over in the process of having no Trevor Keels. Anyway, I don't know if that one landed, but we are going to talk about the outcome here, and we'll get into the details of it. So, Donald, I'll let you go first. I feel like there were a number of players here that you could highlight to start. So I'm not going to dictate the terms of engagement. Why don't you just tell us what your favorite thing is in the good from this victory for Duke?
Look, I'm just going to start with the team as a general. And I think there's two areas that I thought they excelled in against Syracuse. So I'm going to start on the offense. 25 assists on 30 made baskets. That is a season high. That is exactly what we talked about in the preview on how you beat the patented matchup 2-3 zone by passing your way out of it, finding open men, finding the loopholes and the cracks in this defense, and then targeting them. That's exactly what Duke did. A lot of guys had great efforts on the offensive end. Scoring was even paced because everyone was passing the ball around. Jeremy Roach, I'm going to single him out, having 9 assists, really moving the ball around and making sure that everyone was getting involved. And only one turnover. To a lot of excellent. And only one turnover. Right, it led to a lot of excellent plays, right? Like that. That's what passing the ball around will get you. Yes, it may get you some turnovers because you might become a little errant in your passing. But I think these guys did exceptionally well at finding each other with the basketball, and it shows not just on the assist column, but it shows in the fact that the scoring was even. Everybody save for Jeremy Roach had 15 points in the starting lineup. So I thought that was very good distribution of the basketball.
Hey, the assist total for Duke is wrong, guys. I don't know how the official score messed this up, but they said that AJ Griffin had 0 assists. That's completely wrong. AJ Griffin clearly deserves an assist for allowing Wendell Moore to put his hand on AJ's shoulder to elevate for an extra second and make a ridiculous rebound dunk.
It's AJ an assist in a different way. Yes, it's an assist in a different way, but it doesn't count apparently in the stats. We here at the Duke Basketball Report podcast do not care about the official stats. So credit 1 assist to AJ Griffin.
Donald, you brought up that Jeremy Roach was one of the key facilitators. It was he and Wendell Moore who were really leading the way on the facilitating, which, and we've talked a lot about how Wendell Moore fills up the stat sheet, not just in the points, but also in rebounds and assists this season. He had another 10-5-5 game with 15 points, 8 assists, and 6 boards. But I wanted to come back to Jeremy Roach because it's not only that he had 9 assists and only turned the ball over once. It's that he looked so comfortable right after the I guess minor turmoil in his season that he had gotten benched. And I don't think he was benched because he's, so incapable and that he's not playing a role. We talked about this extensively, 2 games ago, but kind of a roller coaster for Jeremy Roach personally, getting benched, then getting back in the starting lineup because of an injury to his friend Trevor Keels. And he responded, I think, pretty brilliantly in this game. So one of the reasons I think that Duke was so crisp on offense is that Jeremy Roach stepped right back into a role that he was comfortable with. Look, he didn't make a lot of shots yesterday, but Duke didn't need him to. Jason, what have you got to sort of start off the good here?
Yeah, so my good, I'm going to start on the other side of the ball. I want to start with the defense. And I want to be really clear about something. There was great defense by Duke in this game, and I'm going to talk about it a bit, but there was also some luck, and luck matters. Luck is a factor in whether or not you win basketball games. There's no two ways about it. Buddy Boeheim and Joe Girard are really, really good basketball players who are outstanding shooters, and both of them missed wide open shots that they would normally make. Now, part of why they were missing was because Wendell Moore and Jeremy Roach were in their shorts all day long. But part of it was also that those guys had an off day. So I want to be really clear that I think that mattered, that luck played a factor in Duke's defense this game. That said, Buddy Boeheim is an all ACC level player, and he did not score a single point until the margin was 30 points this game. I want to repeat that. Duke got the lead to 30 before Buddy Boeheim, the leading scorer for Syracuse, an all ACC player, before he scored a single point in the game. Duke was already leading by 30. Joe Girard was just absolutely hammered by Jeremy Roach all day. It was amazing to me how well Roach was able to stay on Girard. And combined, Buddy Boeheim and Joe Girard shot 2 of 19 from 3, 5 of 28 overall. And by the way, they made 5 shots, but several of those were in mop-up time when Jim Boeheim was playing his starters against our walk-ons. I've been tracking it all year long, as you guys know, especially lately, I should say, that Duke's opponents just don't shoot three-pointers very well against them. Since New Year's Day, since the calendar turned, Duke's opponents are 29 of 135 on three-pointers. That's 23%. Duke's opponents are hitting 23% of their threes. If Duke keeps this up, I don't know that they can, because that's just an absurd number. But if Duke keeps that up, it's really, really hard to beat them. And the offshoot of this is how it affects our efficiency defensively. I'm not sure if you guys noticed, but on Ken Palm, Duke went from being the 26th best defensive team to the 20th best defensive team in the nation based on just this Syracuse game. The story of the game, as much as we talked about the assists, to me, the story of the game is that Duke stopped Syracuse from doing what they wanted to do. Syracuse only scored 59 points, and 11 of those points came in the final 4 minutes when Duke was playing backups and walk-ons. So against our starters, Syracuse couldn't even get to 50.
I mean, Jason, I think that last stat that you mentioned there is reason why, yes, I think there was some luck, but I don't think luck had a lot to do with it. I think the great thing about Duke's defense yesterday is that they forced Syracuse to work extremely hard to take mediocre shots. Like that's the great thing about this defense.
Exactly.
Even if they were even to getting shots off, open shots. Yeah, they had a few open shots and they missed. That's where the luck came in. They missed some of that, but I'll take that because we've had some unlucky bounces go our way in the last couple of weeks. I think the key though is that these guys were forcing them to move the ball around, and those shots that were taken were with 2 seconds left in the shot clock. Didn't look forced, but the entire offense for them look forced because they were trying to find any angle they could against Duke's defense, and Duke wouldn't allow it. So I thought they did really good at making Syracuse work extremely hard to take, the last shot available as opposed to the shot they wanted.
And as you said, Jason, Syracuse's offense normally is actually pretty efficient, and they have those good shooters. So it's a real testament to Duke. Not, I think it'd be hard to come away from this game and think that, oh, the Duke defense is so elite and the Duke offense is good. I mean, there's some bias here in that Syracuse is so lopsided and not being very good on the defensive end, but still a great effort nonetheless. Jason, I want to come back to you and talk about a few of the individual performances from this game, because we did say that Duke was sharing the ball very well, but there were a couple of outstanding offensive performances here. And I think you are going to talk about the guy who is probably Duke's most electric offensive player. That's Paolo Banchero.
Yeah. I'm going to give you a little preview right now of who I'm going to be picking for player of the week. This week, Paolo Banchero averaged 17.5 points per game, 12.5 rebounds per game, 5.5 assists per game, while shooting almost 55% from the field. He is doing such a better job of shot selection and finding open teammates and not forcing things. He has figured out what works for him each different game and really excelling at it. And I think, in our preview, we talked about how important Paulo's role would be, because Duke, against the Syracuse zone, we were going to have to play through him a lot. And I just thought he did a tremendous job of not taking bad shots, him and the entire team, not taking bad shots and just making passes that made it difficult for the Syracuse zone. You can't just shoot over the Syracuse zone. You have to pass around it and pass over it. And Duke just did an excellent job of attacking it all day long. We shot a ton of threes, but both teams that play Syracuse do that. We mentioned in the preview that more than half the field goals that teams shoot against Syracuse are 3-pointers. And Duke shot 37 threes, which is a ton. But we didn't just settle for threes. We looked to see if we could get the ball where we needed it to be, and we took very few bad jumpers. And look, this is something that Paolo was doing earlier in the year. Not that any shot from him is a terrible shot, but he was taking, lower percentage shots, and he stopped doing that. In this game, Duke only took 2 shots in between the lane and the 3-point line, 2 mid-range shots. Everything else we took was basically at the rim or beyond the 3-point line. Those 2 shots there was a 16-footer that Joey Baker took. It was one of those patented times where he fakes a guy off the 3-point line, takes a dribble in and shoots a short jumper. He missed it, but he took a 16-footer. And there was like a 10-foot baseline jumper from Jeremy Roach. Again, that shot missed as well. I should tell you why Duke should not take these shots outside the lane. We missed both of them in this game. But other than that, it was all 3-pointers and by the way, open 3-pointers, not forced 3-pointers, or shots in the lane, mostly shots at the rim. And then the other guy I wanted to mention really quickly, welcome back to Wendell Moore. Wendell
yes.
had we've been tracking the 10, 5, and 5 games. He'd only had one of them against ACC opponents so far this year. His assist to turnover ratio had really been suffering lately, but in this game, he gets 8 assists and just 1 turnover. And as I mentioned earlier, his defense on Buddy Boeheim was a telling point in this game. Welcome back, Wendell Moore.
I would also add to that list, Jason. I agree with all of your highlight selections. I would also add Mark Williams, who you were talking about the zone breaking.
Yes.
There's an element of that's Mark Williams being down low, often standing behind the zone and either being ready for an entry pass or, more importantly, for a lot of the cleanups that were happening yesterday. There were some really nice dunks from Mark Williams.
And Sam, if I can, look, I always point out when we were right on the preview, we previewed this, we previewed that. Something we previewed that I was very wrong. And I said, I was very wrong about it. I said, Mark Williams may not play a big role in this game. Syracuse doesn't take the ball to the basket and stuff. And on defense, he only blocked 1 shot. Syracuse doesn't take the ball to the basket, but Mark Williams played a big role on offense and on rebounding.
I want to shout out my best friend, Jeff, because he sent me this morning. Did you guys see there was one dunk that Mark Williams had where he kind of did the toppy thing that they do with their heads. They pat their heads, but he pointed at the Syracuse guy that he dunked on, a la Sean Kemp. And I don't know how he didn't get a tech for it, but I really,
It was
really
disrespectful.
appreciate him doing that. It was
It was
very
really
disrespectful, and I
disrespectful.
loved it. Do more of that. Like out of the eyes of the ref, because honestly, I'm super shocked because TV Teddy was reffing yesterday, so I'm super shocked that he didn't get a technical for it. But I'm here for that disrespect.
It's okay. Ted Valentine did his best to thwart Duke by running in the way of one of Duke's passes on the break, which caused a turnover. That was just
crazy.
classic Ted Valentine.
Please say they made that a team turnover instead of like crediting that to whoever it was that threw the ball, because that's just
Was
wrong.
it was Moore that was passing it, I think.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, and Joey Baker was right there on the sideline.
So Wendell Moore gets the turnover there, I believe. I think that was Wendell Moore's one turnover.
I think you're right.
Throwing the ball off of Ted Valentine. So otherwise a flawless that pass. I mean, there are a lot of times when we say like, oh, if only this one thing had been this other thing. I mean, that pass was him throwing it to Joey Baker in the corner on the break. That was almost certainly going to turn into another assist. So, Ted Valentine really, really ruining things for Wendell Moore there. But on the topic of Mark Williams, he's not going to block a lot of shots if the ball's not going to the rim. But I like the aggressiveness on offense. I think that there's a lot to be gained for Duke if Mark Williams is acting like that dude on offense and not being not sort of waiting for things to come to him, but going and get it. All right, let's talk about the bad a little bit. I know that it's hilarious to think that there's much bad in a 20-point victory that was really a 30-point victory, save for the garbage time. But Jason, I'll come to you first. Give me anything from the bad for a 20-point win for Duke.
All right, so I don't have a lot to say here. I got two little things, and I'll do them very quickly. First one is turnovers. Duke did have 15 turnovers in this game, and remember, in the preview, I was talking not in the preview, but in the recap, really of the Florida State loss. I mentioned that the magic number for Duke is 12. That Duke wins games if they get less than 12 or less turnovers, and they lose games if they commit more than 12 turnovers. Well, Duke had 15 turnovers, and they won quite easily. And some of those were in the final few minutes when the deep bench was playing, but Duke had 10 turnovers in the first half, including there was a wretched 8-minute stretch in the first half from like the 16-minute mark to the 8-minute mark where Duke had 8 turnovers in 8 minutes. We had a 9-point lead and we gave it away completely, and Syracuse got back in the game. But Duke really cleaned it up. I mean, the turnover story, even though it's bad, Duke really cleaned it up in the second half. We only had 5 turnovers in the second half. And the amazing thing is, even here I am in the bad, I'm saying good things in the bad. I can't help it. Despite committing more turnovers than I'd like, Duke won the points off turnover battle 20-13. I mean, I guess we're going to win any point battle in a game. We win by 30. Anyway, the other bad thing I had, free throws. And part of this is just the way Syracuse plays defense, but it's really hard to penetrate a matchup zone. And we were largely content to either shoot over their zone or pass behind their zone for buckets. So Duke only got to the free throw line 7 times in this game. That's a really, really low number. But it comes just days after Florida State made more free throws than Duke shot. This Duke team does need to be getting to the free throw line. I think Syracuse is just a weird opponent. It's just an aberration. But if you got to identify something as bad, Duke had too many turnovers and did not shoot enough free throws in this game.
There weren't a lot of fouls called at all in this game. I noticed that like at the end of the first half, Duke committed a foul that was, like a non-shooting foul. And I went to go look like, how many fouls are there? And it was the end of the half. And I think between the two teams, there had been like 6 or 7 fouls called.
I noticed that too. Yeah.
Game. So, some of that is Syracuse's style of play, but some of it might just be that I know that I've read that the refs are calling fewer and fewer fouls in college basketball and letting the guys play through. You can debate whether that's a good thing aesthetically for the game or not. But I think that's also just the nature of how it was being played yesterday.
I think when it comes to the turnovers, and just piggybacking a little bit off of Jason, the thing about turnovers in this game is not necessarily that it caused us to do anything terrible, but it does get us into scoring ruts. And we've noticed over the last few games when we do have a lot of turnovers in one half, it leads to a scoring rut, and good teams will take advantage of that. And I think that's the key of improving the turnovers as we go on. Earlier in the year, we weren't giving teams that opportunity to, catch up from a lead or to take a sizable lead because we were taking care of the basketball and we were getting points on most of those possessions. If you turn the ball over, you're not getting any points. And if guys are going down on the other end and scoring, that becomes a problem. Syracuse didn't really do that, save for that one time in the first half where they kind of, got a 9-point lead down in like 1 or 2. They never led in this ball game, and the only time they were tied was at the opening tip. But I think when it comes to better teams, if you get in a scoring rut, you're allowing them to get back into the game. And that's what Duke has to curtail by taking care of the basketball.
Guys, before we move on from the bad and start to preview the Clemson game, I did want to come back to one more good thing. And I think it's an oversight from the fact that Duke had such a thorough performance yesterday, and from the fact that he's been playing, this guy in particular has been playing so well recently. But AJ Griffin made 5 threes yesterday against Syracuse. And it's incredible how quickly he's gone from, returning from injury, limited minutes, not even necessarily the first guy off the bench, to being like key starter, best shooter on the team, like undeniably at this point, I think best shooter on the team. Joey Baker might be slightly more efficient from three. And I haven't checked today if who's leading in 3-point percentage, but in terms of usage, AJ Griffin's like actually getting the shots and actually having plays designed for him. And you can tell that teammates are looking for AJ to set him up for the three. So that is just another incredible performance from him, a guy who has been coming on really strong the last few weeks.
He came on early. I mean, if you remember, the first 2 possessions were him hitting threes, and they looked to get to him early. And honestly, like I said, that proved to be super important in the game because it stretched Syracuse defense out just a little bit. And that's when we were able to go inside, because again, if you start off hitting the three very well, they're going to have to slide out to match that and try and stop that. And because of that, more holes were open. And that's what Duke was, trying to exploit with all those passes.
And the deep irony about AJ Griffin going off early against Syracuse is that Jim Boeheim said in the postgame that his scouting report on this game, that what he told his team was, with Trevor Keels out, they need to focus on AJ Griffin. He's like, this is the guy you have to watch out for. This is the guy we can't let hit 3-pointers, and Duke comes out and AJ immediately hits like 2 or 3 in the first like couple minutes to give Duke an early lead. And if you're Jim Boeheim, you must be like, oh, great. Like the one thing I said we had to do, we're not doing it from the very start of the game.
All right, we will take a quick break. When we get back, we will do a brief Clemson preview because we've already previewed them once. We're going to get to preview Clemson at least 3 times this season for you, because we already previewed them once for the game that got canceled. We'll preview them here, and we'll preview them one more time when Duke has to play the rescheduled game. And by the way, Duke could play Clemson in the ACC tournament, so you might get 4 Clemson previews out of the DBR podcast. This will be the second one. Stick around. We are back, and we are previewing Clemson. Duke gets the Tigers on Tuesday in Cameron Indoor Stadium. This is a game that is on schedule as it has been since the beginning of the season. Duke, of course, was supposed to play at Littlejohn a few weeks ago. That game has been rescheduled to a couple weeks from now. So we already gave you one version of the Clemson preview. We would encourage you in some respects to go back and listen to that, but we'll catch you up sort of on how the Tigers have done the last few weeks. It has not been great going for that team. Donald, I will come to you first because you are usually my man for looking at the schedule. So tell me what has happened to Clemson since we last spoke about them about a month ago.
Yeah, and if you recall back then, and if you want to have a full thorough preview of what we had up to December 22nd, at least, go back to that episode and listen to that. But since then, remember, they had just come off a victory against UVA, which at that time proved to be, oh, that's kind of an interesting victory. And then they were supposed to play us next. And of course, that game got postponed. So the next team they did play was Virginia, and they ended up losing to Virginia on January 4th. Since that game, they have not played very well. They only have 2 wins in their last 5 games. Those wins coming against NC State and just yesterday against Pittsburgh. They've lost to Notre Dame, Boston College, and Syracuse. So this team is kind of reeling, and they're trying to get back on track because right now they're tied for 10th in the ACC. And this is a team that earlier in the season, we were talking about them being kind of one of the surprises of the ACC and how they were playing. And some of the teams that not necessarily they were beating, but they were playing tough against tough opponents. So they're going to come into Cameron. They're going to want to be on fire for this game because they want to get a signature win to kind of get them back on track in the ACC.
So, Jason, how have the metrics adjusted at all for Clemson during this recent skid? Yesterday's drubbing of Pittsburgh notwithstanding.
Yeah, they were better in the metrics when we looked at them last time. That's for sure. The Clemson's currently 65th in KenPom. They were in the low 50s, as I recall, when we previewed them last time. Not a huge difference, but definitely indicative of a team that is struggling lately. They have the 54th best offense, the 83rd best defense. So I guess you could say, sort of on both sides of the ball there, they're good, they're okay, but they're not great at either aspect of playing basketball. Let's start with the offense. They are an excellent 3-point shooting team. This is their strength. They hit better than 38% of their threes. That's the 17th best in the country. They're good, but not nearly as good at hitting 2-point field goals. They hit about 52% of their 2-point field goals, which is right around the top 100 in the nation. They don't turn the ball over a lot, and they don't give up many steals. They're top 40 in the country at preventing steals. So what don't they do well on offense? Because those things are all like, those are all the hallmarks of a decent offense. They get their shots blocked a lot. That's the thing they don't do well. They're among the bottom 50 teams in the country at getting their shots blocked. And they're not a very good offensive rebounding team. They grab just 27% of their missed shots, which is a very low figure. Good offensive rebounding teams are up in the mid to high 30s and sometimes even 40% of their missed shots. Clemson, again, grabbing just 27%. On the defensive side of the ball, they do an okay job of guarding the 3-point line. Not great, but not bad. Their opponents hit just under a third of their threes. Clemson doesn't really block shots. They don't really get steals. They don't get turnovers very much. They're like in the bottom 100 teams in the country in all those sort of steal and block kind of numbers and stuff like that. So they don't do a great job of preventing you from doing what you want to do. This is something I mentioned when we previewed them last time. They are phenomenally unlucky about one thing: opponent free throw percentage. We talked about this last time. Their opponents are still hitting like 78% from the free throw line, which is just crazy that they have such bad free throw percentage defense. It's very, very weird. And I do want to talk very quickly about their experience. Again, this is something we mentioned last time, but it still holds true. This is a team with almost all juniors and seniors playing. There's like one freshman who plays a little bit, and then sophomore PJ Hall, who's their best player, is the only other sophomore who gets a lot of time. And they are a small team. Their guards and wings are all guys who are 6'4" and under. They don't have much rim protection at all. PJ Hall's their tallest player, and he's not a rim protector. There could be real opportunities here, I think, for Wendell Moore and AJ Griffin, especially, and Trevor Keels, if Trevor Keels plays. It's unclear whether Trevor Keels is going to be back for this game, which is great news, by the way, that he's not going to be out for a long time, apparently. But Duke's guys who can slash to the hole. Clemson doesn't have the size on their guards to be able to prevent Duke from doing that, and they don't have rim protection to stop Duke from getting to the rim. So I think that could be a key to the game. And then going back to sort of the initial thing I mentioned, Clemson lives by being a great 3-point shooting team. And as I talked about with Duke earlier, Duke is among the best teams in the country at preventing teams from hitting threes. This is a case of, an immovable object and an irresistible force. And we will see which one triumphs. If Duke prevents Clemson from hitting a third of their threes, which Duke usually prevents teams from hitting even a quarter of their threes, if Clemson doesn't hit a third of their threes, Clemson has no chance in this game.
Yeah, I really want to see Duke lock it down on the perimeter on defense in this game, which, as you pointed out, Jason, has been a strength recently. Whether or not Keels is in the game, I think, by the way, that Keels is a plus at that end of the court, but. Even without him, Duke has Wendell Moore, Jeremy Roach, and AJ Griffin to be guarding on the perimeter. And then down low, I want to see Duke take advantage of the size difference here. You mentioned that PJ Hall is the biggest guy on this team, and he's not a real like imposing type big. Duke has two guys in the starting lineup who should be able to overpower PJ Hall at that end of the court. That's Mark Williams and Paulo Banchero. So I want to see Duke decisively win a rebounding battle again against Clemson the way that they did against Syracuse. And I want to see Banchero and Williams in particular take it to PJ Hall and the rest of the limited Clemson front court on offense, where hopefully they'll be able to dominate. This may be a game where, Duke, I hope this is a game where Duke relies on the layups and the offense around the basket even more than they have in recent weeks, which is saying something, because I think that's a key part of the offense. So we'll see how Duke does against Clemson on Tuesday.
And one final note, I think this is important because this is the last home game in Cameron before we go on what will now be a 3-game road trip. So we have that momentum. Cameron was wild yesterday. I want to shout out the crazies. I want to shout out everybody who's at the game because it sounded electric on television. They need to replicate that for Tuesday. Bring that energy because I know Duke will need it in this game.
Guys, one more fun thing before we get to player of the week. Did you all see this Chronicle story this week about the pre-tenting quiz that was going on in Cameron? I don't want to belabor. I don't want to belabor the story by asking you all to fill out the quiz questions and tell me.
We got many emails saying y'all should take the quiz. I ain't taking that quiz.
We ain't in school.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm not in school. I've done enough Duke schooling to not have to do this. And also I cannot remember which recruits were in Cameron for particular events.
Actually, wait, I knew that one. That the one asking which recruits were there for Countdown. I knew that one.
I can't keep up with that stuff. So nor do I know the margins of victory or the dates of any of the games. That kind of information just leaks right out of me now.
Right. So it's worth noting, everyone who looked at that quiz and went, "Oh my God, it's crazy, it's impossible." They studied. The guys who took this quiz, all the Duke fans who wanted, not Duke fans, Duke students, I should say, who wanted to, get to the front of the tenting line and make sure they had a spot in Cameron for Coach K's final game against North Carolina. Wow. They studied and they knew what to study. They knew they were supposed to study, all the different information about the guys on the team, study their social media accounts, study game results and stuff. So this isn't like let's test your general knowledge. This is go out there, learn everything you can about the current Duke basketball team, and then take a test on them. And so, of course, it looks silly and absurd to us. We haven't all been studying.
It's not even that it's absurd, right? Like they've done this test in previous years. This is not the first year for this. I think what can be commended for these students is the number of tents that signed up for this. 179. Mind you, Jason, you were a headline monitor. I was a headline monitor. At my time, you could only have 100 tents in Cameron. That was the max. So 79 tents as of right now. Does not matter how well they did on that test. There's no spot for them in Cameron for that game. And they know that. And they have to hope that, a bunch of people, mess up along the way for them to get an opportunity to get in, at least as a student for that game. So that's where I think the studying came in, because, a point here, a point there is the difference between number 63 and number 147.
Yeah. And one of the guys that I used to tent with, his son is in one of the tents that made it into the, that passed the test, I guess you'd say, or, scored high enough on the test. His son is obviously currently at Duke. And he told me that he and the guys in his tent, spent winter break studying.
Of course they did. They're Duke students. Of course they're going to study. We study for everything that we do. That's how we got into Duke. That's how you graduate from Duke. There is no surprise in me about them studying for this test, especially given the stakes. As I mentioned, this is for the last game in Cameron for Coach K in his storied career. Of course you want to study for that. You want to be a part of that.
Yeah. By the way, guys, as long as we're talking about being in Cameron, did you hear the game on Saturday? The game Duke played against Syracuse was the 50th anniversary of the day in 1972 that Duke Indoor Stadium became Cameron Indoor Stadium, named obviously in honor of athletic director, football coach, basketball coach Eddie Cameron, who retired in 1972, and they honored him by renaming the stadium. So happy birthday to Cameron Indoor Stadium, 50 years I guess today's Sunday. So 50 years and 1 day old on this date.
Well, also the birth date for the actual stadium is like January 6th or something like that. So I know we missed that. So a lot of memories in Cameron or Duke Indoor Stadium in January.
Donald, I wanted to re-emphasize the point that you made about the number of tents. If you're a Duke alum and you sort of remember the whole tenting process, having 170 tents potentially going in for blue tenting is just so much more than it usually is. I mean, we've talked about how the excitement on campus has to be just that much higher, given that they lost the season last year. And so there's all these students that haven't done it before, and it's Coach K's last season. So the interest is out of control, which also means there are plenty of opportunities for the headline monitors to monkey around with the rules and let people in who aren't in the line. So I'll be looking out for, I won't actually be doing this, but if I was a student, I'd be looking out for all of the shenanigans that are inevitable.
I will say, I mean, black tinting, they added a level between the time I graduated now called black tinting. That was canceled because of COVID concerns. And then usually, as you guys know, like blue tinting was for the diehardest of diehard to be 10 people a night. There wouldn't be that many tents that were going to subject themselves to basically everybody being in the tent every single night throughout the month of January. It was white tinting that got this sort of hoopla because that was the last like 2 or 3 weeks before the UNC game.
They would reserve, I think they would reserve like 30 or 20 tent spots for white tenting. So there would only be like 70 or so blue tents, and the groups at the back of the blue tent line would I think in a normal year would think to themselves, is it worth even going through blue tenting to be right in front of the white tenters when we might just get a white tent spot and not have to work nearly as hard to get
exactly
the same corner of the stadium. So
so you'd only have like 30 or
completely other level.
The thing I noticed about it, from the Chronicle article and from other stuff I've read about it, interviews with the various blue tenters or blue tenting applicants, is how many of them are juniors and seniors. Because now look, in my day, we did it all 4 years, but it's become more and more a thing on campus where the younger kids, the freshmen and the sophomores are the ones who do the really diehard stuff. And as you've done it a couple of years, you begin to age out of it, so to speak. That is not happening this year because, as you ably identified, we didn't have any tenting last year. There were no fans in Cameron, and everybody's saying goodbye to the GOAT. And that's such a huge deal for this to be Coach K's final season. So I that's probably why we saw just this absolute explosion of tents applying for the really rigorous blue tenting, because everybody wants to make sure, no matter what, that they will be there for the last game.
Just a personal note for me. We're using this to kind of promote the Cameron Crazies and to be a part of that atmosphere and the hoopla this year. I just want to make a personal plea out there. I'm looking for tickets to the Wake Forest and the Florida State games, which are the week of February 15th and 19th. So if you have tickets that you're willing to bestow upon me, dbrpodcast@gmail.com. Holler at me.
Donald, you are shameless. I love it. All right.
Shameless.
We have one more topic. It is the topic we do every weekend at the end of a week of Duke basketball. We have to do Player of the Week. Jason already gave us his. So, Jason, I'll very quickly let you re-summarize why you're picking Paolo Banchero.
He averaged like not even just a double-double, but the dude averaged, 17 and a half points and 12 and a half rebounds per game and 5.5 assists. I want to highlight that. The fact that Paolo has turned into an assist machine. We're tracking Wendell Moore's 10, 5, and 5. Paolo Banchero is crushing on the 10, 5, and 5 these days. He's averaging this week 17, 12, and 5. That's amazing.
Does bring his actual points per game total down, or his points per game average down, which just goes to show you what an incredible year he's having. But of course, I think it's okay given the rest of the statistical excellence that he's putting up. Donald, who do you have for Player of the Week?
I think Paolo Banchero is the best choice. I think he is an excellent choice, but unfortunately, he is not my choice. I'm going to use my pick this week to show love to Jeremy Roach. In a week where, you kind of had Trevor Keels go down. He had been in this new role coming off of the bench, and he thrived in the one thing that we needed him to thrive in, and that's distributing the basketball. 6 assists against FSU. Coach K said after that game, it was one of his best games at Duke. So he followed that up with 9 assists against Syracuse, a plus 27 in that game. And he only had 2 turnovers on the week. So being able to come off of the bench and get back into the starting lineup and use that as an opportunity to really pave the way for our team to just excel on the offensive end, I think is a good shot. So I'm going to show love to Jeremy Roach this week.
I love that choice, Donald. I now almost regret picking Paulo.
No,
Donald,
don't regret it. I mean, those are two excellent picks.
Donald, you stole the explanation for Jeremy Roach right out of my mouth, because I had written up 2 versions of my player of the week. I had written up one where I picked Paolo Banchero for all of the obvious reasons that Jason had stated, that he was excellent in both games despite the loss. You know, the brief disappearing act in the Florida State game, it doesn't feel like was entirely his fault. Some of that was execution by the other guys. I know you guys talked about the game planning a bit on the episode that I missed, but of course he came roaring back against Syracuse. So I had written out that explanation, but I had also written a whole thing about how Jeremy Roach deserves player of the week this week, because he, in the Syracuse game, really rebounded from the setback that he suffered of getting sent to the bench, and may not have scored a lot, but really was a big driver of that quick victory against Syracuse. So I had both of those written up, but I think Paulo deserves it, just, you know, without all the extra contests. So I'm going to give my player of the week vote to Paolo Banchero. That, I think, is going to do it for topics on this episode of the Duke Basketball Report podcast. Keep emailing us. The mailbag has been full. It's been a lot of fun to get those messages, and we are frantically trying to respond to them all. So that has been excellent. We will be back after the Clemson game, which is Tuesday night in Cameron. If you're going to be there, have fun, be safe. And we will talk to you again very soon. dbrpodcast@gmail.com for all of your mailbag questions and comments, etc. for us. So for Jason Evans and for Donald Wine, I am Sam Klein. This has been episode 382 of the Duke Basketball Report podcast. Duke Band, take us home.
Yeah, Donald, you got World Cup qualifying coming up?
Yeah. 3 games in the snow, in the cold already.
Nice.
We're home for all 3 games?
We have 2 at home. The away game is in Canada, in Hamilton.
That would be in the snow.
Yeah.
It's funny.
Yeah.
When I think of World Cup, when I think of qualifying, I don't even think of, I mean, I know Canada's really good this year. I mean, like, they're a contender, but I usually think of, he goes to the Caribbean or he goes to Central America or something like that. Nah.
Well, this is a unique window because of COVID. We had to finish World Cup qualifying. So last year they added a January window. It's like the first time they've had one. So this is something where I actually had to buy jackets because I didn't need to worry about it for soccer games. So here we are.